These are 8 neo-noir thrillers from the 1980s that launched careers, earned Oscar nominations, and pushed boundaries that modern Hollywood wouldn't dare touch. Directors filled stories with morally dangerous characters, seedy locations, and endings that didn't always wrap up neatly. These grimy gems remind us what adult-oriented filmmaking looked like before sequels and superhero franchises took over. Street Smart is the film that created Morgan Freeman, the movie star. After years of starring in things like The Electric Company, TV movies, soap operas, and smaller supporting roles, but none of that translated to leading roles until he took on Fast Black, a violent Times Square pimp who becomes entangled with a journalist played by Christopher Reeve. The journalist has fabricated a magazine story about a pimp, and when Fast Black realizes the fake profile matches him perfectly, he uses the situation to his advantage during a murder trial. The Academy nominated him for Best Supporting Actor, although Sean Connery took the statue for The Untouchables. Director Jerry Schatzberg shot the movie primarily in Montreal, and Cannon Films distributed it. But as Christopher Reeve later wrote in his memoir, they allowed the film to die at the box office without advertising or promotion. It made barely over $1 million in theatrical gross, which was a shame. But Freeman's career never looked back. Terrence Stamp plays Willie Parker, a gangster who testified against his criminal associates and has been hiding in Spain for a decade. And when 2 hitmen finally track him down to transport him to his execution, he displays an eerie, almost philosophical acceptance of his fate. John Hurt plays the seasoned professional killer, cast brilliantly against his typically wounded persona, while Tim Roth makes his theatrical film debut as the volatile young apprentice. The Clash frontman Joe Strummer was originally considered for Roth's role, but his bandmates vetoed the idea, and that's when Strummer recommended Roth based on his performance as a skinhead in Made in Britain. That single recommendation launched Roth's entire career. Directed by Stephen Frears and scored by flamenco guitarist Paco de Lucia, the music gives the Spanish landscapes the feel of a modern Western. While it came and went at the box office in 1984, it's an absolute delight of a movie if you've never seen it. Neil Jordan had made only one film before Mona Lisa, but this established him as a major international talent and paved the way for The Crying Game years later. Bob Hoskins plays George, a low-level London criminal just released from prison, who takes a job chauffeuring a high-class call girl through the city's underworld. Kathy Tyson, in her film debut, plays Simone, the elegant woman who gradually reveals the dangerous circumstances of her life. Jordan originally wrote a harsher, more violent script, but meeting Hoskins changed everything, and he spent 2 weeks rewriting to emphasize George's fundamental decency and his genuine inability to understand women. Michael Caine stepped in to play the menacing crime boss, specifically to support his friend Hoskins. George Harrison's handmade films produced the project for around $2 million, and the investment paid off spectacularly in awards recognition. Hoskins won virtually every major prize that year. The Academy nominated him for Best Actor, though Paul Newman won it for The Color of Money. The Criterion Collection released a restored Blu-ray in 2021 with a transfer supervised by Jordan himself, which makes it easy to track down if you want to see why Hoskins became a star. Trouble in Mind exists in a universe that feels like a fever dream, stitched together from classic noir and dystopian sci-fi, set in the fictional Rain City but filmed entirely in Seattle. Chris Christopherson plays Hawk, a world-weary ex-cop released from prison who drifts back into the criminal underworld, and Keith Carradine shows up as Coop, a young man whose gradual corruption gets mirrored by his increasingly outlandish appearance. Wild hair, excessive makeup, the whole transformation happening as his morality decays. Director Alan Rudolph had served as assistant director on Robert Altman's Nashville and The Long Goodbye, and that same dreamy, atmospheric sensibility carries over into every frame here. Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars and ranked it 7th on his Best Films of 1986 list, while Marianne Faithfull contributes haunting vocals to the title track, her gravelly voice matching the melancholic tone perfectly. The film grossed less than $20,000 theatrically, with a budget of nearly $3 million, a commercial disaster that's since become a cult touchstone for anyone who loves their noir with a surrealist edge. Curtis Hanson spent years in the Hollywood trenches before becoming the Oscar-winning director of LA Confidential, and The Bedroom Window represents his first major studio thriller, a Hitchcockian puzzle based on a 1971 novel called The Witnesses. Steve Guttenberg, then riding high on his comedy successes, plays a man having an affair with his boss's wife, and that wife happens to be French icon Isabelle Huppert. When she witnesses an assault from his bedroom window, they concoct a scheme where he reports the crime as if he'd seen it himself, all to protect her from scandal. The lie spirals dangerously out of control from there. Huppert wouldn't make another English-language film for 7 years after this one. Critics noted the film's likeness to Rear Window, which the title deliberately echoes. With an $8 million budget, the film earned around $12.5 million, making it one of the only modest commercial successes on this entire list, the mere case where a grimy little thriller actually turned a profit. Eric Red made his name writing 2 of the decade's best genre scripts, The Hitcher and Near Dark, the latter co-written with Kathryn Bigelow. And for his directorial debut, he stripped everything down to the essentials. 2 mismatched hitmen transporting a 9-year-old witness across Texas to his execution, with the entire movie essentially taking place inside a car, as the boy plays his captors against each other to survive. Roy Scheider, best known as the hero of Jaws, plays Cohen, the cold professional, while Adam Baldwin, fresh off Full Metal Jacket, plays Tate, the volatile hothead. The MPAA gave the movie considerable trouble during post-production, slapping it with an X rating because a child was involved in the dangerous situations. It made only $45,000 in theatrical gross. But if you're looking for a tense, claustrophobic thriller where professional killers slowly unravel while a clever kid exploits their weaknesses, you won't be disappointed. Ken Russell was never a filmmaker who played it safe, and the British provocateur behind Tommy and Altered States brought his confrontational style to this psychological erotic thriller starring Kathleen Turner, at the peak of her post-Body Heat fame. She plays a fashion designer who moonlights as a prostitute named China Blue, while Anthony Perkins stalks her as a deranged street preacher wielding a sharpened weapon. 5 separate times the MPAA rejected the film, refusing to grant anything less than an X rating, despite Russell's repeated cuts. Turner took the role against her agent's advice, and later called it some of her best work, praising Russell for making her brave enough to take risks. The film struggled theatrically, but found its audience on home video, and the result is a movie that walks the line between art house provocation and exploitation sleaze. Turner delivers a fearless dual performance as a woman compartmentalizing 2 completely separate lives, with Anthony Perkins chewing scenery as only he could in his post-Psycho years. The Long Good Friday endured one of British cinema's most notorious distribution battles before audiences ever saw a single frame. Completed in 1979, the film sat on the shelf because financier Lou Grade found its IRA subplot too sympathetic to release. Handmade Films purchased the rights and finally gave it a proper theatrical release after all the back and forth. Bob Hoskins plays Harold Shand, a London gangster attempting to go legitimate through a massive development deal in the Docklands, only to find his empire under attack from forces he doesn't understand. Helen Mirren plays his sophisticated partner, with a young Pierce Brosnan making his film debut as an IRA assassin. The screenplay's references to future Olympic development in the Docklands proved oddly prophetic when London hosted the 2012 Olympics at that exact location. Critics consider this the quintessential British gangster film, and they frequently note that without it, Guy Ritchie's Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels probably wouldn't exist. The BFI ranked it 21st on their list of the greatest British films ever made, which puts it in rarefied company for a movie that almost never got released at all.